Animal imaging in this portion of the shared resource is large animal imaging. So that would include CT, or computed tomography, magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, nuclear scintigraphy, ultrasound, and planar radiography. Since we are working with large animal models, these are client-owned animals that have spontaneous tumors. So we can provide researchers with access to human imaging capacity to look at animal tumors that are very similar to those that we find in people. Unlike mouse models, which are induced tumors, these tumors biologically behave very similarly to a tumor that might happen in a human being. We can use imaging to identify and then monitor changes in these tumors over time or during the course of therapy in a way that would occur very similarly in a human hospital. We have on staff 7 board-certified veterinary radiologists, and what that allows for is the expertise to interpret the images by veterinary radiologists, so people who are familiar with the animal anatomy and animal-specific neoplasm. So particularly in regards to tumors of the central nervous system, MRI is definitely the imaging modality to use. CT is an X-ray-based technology, but it provides excellent anatomic detail for looking at different tissue types than the MRI. It's very useful for evaluating lung tissue, and in cancer imaging that's very important for looking for metastatic disease or even primary lung tumors. And then it is very useful for evaluating the musculoskeletal system and particularly skeletal structures. Nuclear scintigraphy is a very different imaging modality from most of the others. While it does provide some anatomic information, what's most interesting about it is the ability to define function of different tissues. So that might be the thyroid gland, it might be regions of blood flow, it might be areas of very subtle bone turnover, either small fractures or, in the case of cancer imaging, that might include metastases to bone that are not detectable in any other way. Right now, we're engaged in a project with one of our oncologic surgeons at the veterinary school using cryotherapy to treat primary bone tumors in dogs. And the project that this particular researcher is involved with is using CT to identify the bone lesion and then to insert the cryoprobe, the treatment probe, into the lesion under CT guidance, apply the cold therapy, and CT has the ability to look for specific changes in the tissue quality to know that we have achieved the appropriate level of therapy and extent of therapy and have treated the whole tumor.
So the animal imaging shared resource is composed of 2 components, the Center for Molecular and Genomic Imaging and the Center for Imaging Sciences. The Center for Molecular and Genomic Imaging deals with small animals, rodents, typically mice and rats. A lot of the cancer models are in mice, and that's the type of animals that we deal with. Similar to the clinical arena for imaging humans, we can image small animals in order to understand human disease. For positron emission tomography, PET imaging, we need to have radiopharmaceuticals that we can inject into the animals. And we have facilities for doing that. We have a biomedical cyclotron and radiochemistry hot cells in which we can produce the radiopharmaceuticals. So in the spectrum of technologies for animal imaging, we have optical imaging as well. Optical imaging can be a low-cost method for investigating animal models by the introduction of either a bioluminescent probe or a fluorescent probe. Besides optical imaging and nuclear medicine imaging, we also have MRI imaging, magnetic resonance imaging, very similar to the clinical imaging technique that's used on humans. So it does span into the functional and physiological imaging in that we can do magnetic resonance spectroscopy to understand a little bit about the underlying biology of the anatomy. For researchers just beginning on in vivo imaging, we do provide services besides the technologies themselves. We can also help with studies design, image analysis, and grant writing and publication writing.